thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this afternoon from wherever you're dialing in from. We really appreciate the time. Everyone's busy, but we're thrilled that you have joined. We've got a brilliant panel for you, and today we're talking about sustainability reporting. We've got a fantastic group of panelists. So we have Isabel, who's from Because, who's going to share with us just why having your sustainability data and reported externally is so important today. Marina's going to talk to us from TerraVerde about how we structure these reports in a balanced way between ensuring that we're communicating our real-time data and those metrics, but also balancing it with a nice storytelling narrative, which is really important if we're going to be able to have our stakeholders who we want to be reading these to actually listen and recognize the broader work that we're doing. And then Renée from Orascom is going to give us some insights from how she works on their reports inside the industry, giving some tips and examples to make sure they're transparent and are really focusing on next steps in action. So that's the format for us today. Before we start, if you haven't already, we'd love you to pop into the chat whether or not you or your organization currently communicates an external sustainability report or not, just a yes or a no. So far, we've got a total mix, which is brilliant. I hope we're all here because we're curious to think about if we have one, how can it be best practice and perhaps do its job better? And if we don't have one, hopefully we're curious about finding those tips from the panel today about how we need to go about doing that. And then we'd also love you to consider in the next few minutes as we begin, sharing with us in the chat as well, what is your main challenge with writing, preparing, gathering that data, communicating in the right way to which stakeholders for your sustainability or impact report? What is the main challenge you have with it right now? And if you're not yet doing one, what is your greatest barrier as to why your organization has not yet done one? So that's what we'd love you to be sharing in the chat in the next few minutes as we begin. And then during the next sort of 55 minutes or so, we'd love you to use the Q&A function. So that's different to the chat for any questions that you have. And at the end, we hope to have 15 or 20 minutes where we can take questions from the participants here today for different panelists. So if you wanted a specific question to somebody, please pop that in. If it's generic, that's also fine. And we'll get to as many of those as we can. And without further ado, I think we'll get started. So it's a thrill to hand over now to Isabel, who's going to share why it's so important today for organizations in this sector to have their sustainability reports. Thanks, Isabel.
Perfect. Thank you. Yes, so thank you very much for inviting us and for kicking us off. As Katy said, I'm Isabel Lissner. I'm the Business Product and Senior Sustainability Manager at Because. And I have the pleasure to kick us off today. And just to give a brief introduction into sustainability reporting, what it is, why it matters, and why you should get started today. So. Yeah, first of all, I think it's important to recognize that sustainability reporting is no longer optional. There are many stakeholders that require it and many reasons why you should do it. So just to name a few, the regulatory pressure is increasing in any legislation. Sustainability reporting requirements are growing and tightening, and even smaller operations and businesses will be required to report soon. So it's better to get started sooner than later. Then, of course, we have different stakeholders that we're working with, investors and other stakeholder demands. We have investors, owners. Oh, sorry, this jumped on its own. Investors, owners, management companies that are asking for data to assess the long-term risk, but also to assess the value. So reporting is not longer a nice to have, but really something they will require from you to invest in you. And then we also know that there are many studies showing that customers are expecting businesses to be more sustainable. They are looking for sustainable options and especially for transparency. So to avoid greenwashing, they try to look at trusted sources to be sure that the choices they make are in fact sustainable. But when talking about sustainability reporting, what is it we are actually talking about? So a classic sustainability report is basically covering 3 areas. And here we have first of all, the environmental performance with the energy consumption, water consumption, the waste production, carbon emissions, and the biodiversity impact. Then we have the social performance, which encompasses topics like employee health and well-being, diversity and inclusion, staff training and development, but also the community support. So what are you giving back to the community, and the guest involvement. And lastly, we have the governance performance. So here we're looking at risk management and compliance metrics, stakeholder engagement, for example, a responsible supply chain, and transparency and reporting, like exposing sustainability certification, for example. I don't know why, but the slides seem to jump on their own. So apologies if that causes some friction in my presentation. So if we look at the structure of a report or the data foundation, first of all, we have to look at our baseline data. So we have to set the boundaries for collecting our data and look at the current performance metrics to see where we are. Then as a second pillar, you could say we have our KPIs and targets. So we need to define specific indicators and measurable goals that we set for ourselves in terms of sustainability. And lastly, we have the progress. So showing year on year what we have achieved, how we have improved our metrics, and how much we moved closer to our own key performance indicators. So how can you prepare for a sustainability report? And here you can divide the steps into 4 tasks. So the first one would be prioritize. So first of all, you need to identify your material topics and disclosure requirements, and set the priorities and goals that you want to achieve. Sustainability is a very broad topic. And yeah, if you just look at the European ESRS disclosure requirements, you have over 1,000 data points that you potentially could report on. So it's really important to set, sorry about that, to set the boundaries and understand what is really, where can I have the biggest impact and what is impacting me the most. Next, you have to prepare. And that's probably the most important and also most difficult step. So first of all, you have to understand your data needs, who owns the data, what are the sources, and the processes how to get them. You have to build robust data collection policies and standard operation procedures to ensure that you get the data in the frequency you need it. You need to also identify data collection risks and control activities. So you have to understand where you might have data gaps and how to avoid them. You have to train your organization. So you have to also assign your employees to collecting the data for you, helping to aggregate it. This is really irritating. I'm very sorry. And you should also choose a reporting solution, so a data collection mechanism, to ensure that you can collect the data systematically, and a tool that helps you to analyze the data efficiently. Then when you have set this foundation and prepared yourself for the reporting, it's important to consolidate all the data that you need to calculate the metrics. So you might take the data and normalize it. For example, you have the energy intensity or the carbon footprint per guest night, so to ensure that you can make the data comparable, digestible, and useful to indicate whether you're proceeding on your journey or not. And then in this step, it's also important to test and validate the data capture and quality, because you might find out that some of the sources are not very reliable, or you see that you encounter data gaps over and over. So it's a good way to identify where you can improve your process. And lastly, present your results, of course, and conduct a postmortem. So prepare and publish the report. And that doesn't mean only externally, but also internally. Make your employees aware what you have achieved, and where you stand in your data collection journey and your ESG goals. And then identify improvements for the next reporting cycle, so you're prepared and can even improve the next year. But what is this data used for? So you have created this wonderful report with a lot of metrics, a lot of data, and a lot of information. So who is consuming this data and for what purposes? So I already mentioned the hotel asset stakeholders, so brand operators, owners, investors, and asset managers, for example, that need this data, first of all, for compliance reporting, but also for the risk assessment and asset valuation, as well as their own disclosure obligations from the shareholders. So yeah, it will be a requirement basically to operate to have this data available. Then your clients. So sustainability data is increasingly included in requests for proposals, and your clients, especially corporate clients and event planners, are evaluating if you are aligning with their own ESG commitments as well. And then, yeah, they use it for the internal reporting on their supply chain sustainability, because if they need to report on sustainability, and you are in the value chain, they are obliged to collect the data from you as well. Then we have the commercial distribution intermediaries. So here I'm talking about marketplaces, bed banks, and GDSs that, for example, distribute your certification status, like Booking.com and Google does. They highlight the sustainability options to the end users, and they use the reporting you do also to ensure that your sustainability claims are accurate. And lastly, of course, we have the authorities. So they ensure that you comply with the legislative requirements, but also to monitor the industry progress towards national or international sustainability goals. That's often hidden, but of course, the governments also have their own sustainability goals and agendas, and they need to have indicators of whether they are moving into the right direction or not. So in a nutshell, why start your sustainability reporting now? And I think you can best summarize it in this very famous quote: you can't manage what you don't measure. So it's important to stay ahead of the reporting curve before it becomes mandatory. So to individual properties or smaller companies, it might not apply right now that they have to comply with legislative requirements. But it will come in the future. So the sooner you start, the better. Unlock hidden efficiencies and savings. So the moment you look into your data and understand what's going on, you can also track inefficiencies and ensure that you can improve your performance. You also win trust and with that business. So if you can transparently report on your sustainability initiatives, corporate clients will trust you more. Attract better guests, partners, employees. I also mentioned that the awareness is growing, and especially when we look at the employees and the younger employees, they are looking for more sustainable and responsible employers. Get the visibility where it counts. As mentioned, on marketplaces, sustainability is already highlighted and it will only grow. And lastly, future-proof your brand, because sustainability is not going away, reporting is not going away, so it's better to be on track and start now. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions around how we solve that problem, you're welcome to reach out to me. And apologies for the technical issues. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you so much, Isabel. That was a fantastic way to succinctly share step by step the how and the why, and a little bit of the what too. So really, really helpful. If you have any questions for Isabel, please do pop them in the Q&A. That also is for any other speakers coming up, and we'll try to get 10-15 minutes at the end for any audience questions. So please do keep them coming in that Q&A, and we'll get to as many as we can. Thank you, Isabel. I'm now happy to introduce Marina, or invite Marina to actually introduce yourself, if that's okay. And you're going to talk to us a little bit more of that how as well, and speak to some of the why. So I think it's sort of the next bit on how do we communicate which important bits of information, enrich kind of narratives to support all those multiple stakeholders who are really needing to have visibility of how your organization is performing. So over to you, Marina. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katie. My name is Marina Bradford. I'm one of the 3 co-founding directors of TerraVerde Sustainability. So we specialize in advancing greener tourism, but essentially supporting organizations in travel, tourism, hospitality with environmental strategies. And so obviously reporting always comes in very handy across the board. And that's obviously the way to communicate the successes, but also the learnings along the way. So following the presentation from Isabel, I just wanted to add the human lens to the compliance requirements and data and talk about how we can leverage all of the effort that goes into the reporting to make sure you have more engagement and hopefully more compelling storytelling and maybe greater value for the business. So first, I invite you to consider sustainability reporting not just as a compliance exercise, but actually a showcase of progress and also the driver of progress, because that's something that is slightly different lens to consider when you're putting together your story or you're putting together your reports. And if we broaden the purpose and how the reporting may be utilized by the various stakeholders, we can also consider it's going to be a chance of publicly committing and declaring your intentions, your targets, your progress, obviously building transparency, as I've already mentioned, but also it increases accountability, because once you put something in the public domain, that's something you're going to have to then perform against, and you have to demonstrate progress. So that starts to focus the minds and is becoming a really useful tool for sustainability managers within the business to go and speak to their senior management. We've committed to something last year. We're now going to have to demonstrate how we have moved past that. And that overall starts to drive progress within the organization and ultimately within the industry. That starts to encourage stakeholder engagement as well, because you're demonstrating the various moving parts of your program and the participation of the various areas of impact, as well as the stakeholders. And the stories that you may be able to tell within your reporting become really powerful ways of demonstrating what's possible and how you're interacting with the society environment around you. It's also an opportunity for learning and reflection. So yes, we collect lots of data and we tell lots of great performance metrics and targets, but it's also an opportunity to see what has worked, what hasn't worked, perhaps why, what may be the challenges, because not everything in your reporting will be within your gift. So not everything you're going to be looking at will be something you always can control. There'll be degrees of influence, but also sort of the broader perspective. So there's a bit of reflection there as well. And it's also very helpful to actually look at those sections in reports to understand that not everything is very smooth sailing, which it never really is. But even acknowledging what that looks like will help you improve further. And importantly, it's demonstration of what can be achieved in the industry, because others will also be reading your report, even if they not particularly have a stake in your organization. So maybe your competitors, maybe your peers, maybe your partners. Everybody's struggling with very similar challenges, and sometimes it might seem like it's very specific to a sector, but actually it's very transferable in sustainability space. So looking at what can be achieved and what is possible also starts pushing other organizations and sectors forward as well. And everybody always starts to look at what is everyone else doing? Nobody wants to be behind, right? So some organizations might want to be at the front and leaders, but what nobody really wants to be is the very last one in line. So starting to see what is the sector performance, what is the standard, what should we also be doing because everybody else is doing that, starts becoming really an important message for the boards, for senior management, but ultimately just to make sure that overall the bar is raised and we have more to celebrate every year. So ultimately, when we put all this information together within that frame, we want to think about how do we best actually engage and make sure the potential is maximized. So I wanted to offer 5 tips or recommendations, I suppose, as to how you might frame this kind of approach and how you start structuring your reports with all of those considerations in mind. So the first one is defining the purpose and the audience of your report, and how you frame it and how you call it will then ultimately drive what's going to go into it and who is going to be using it and for what purpose. So we already know there's multiple stakeholders and they're looking for very different information, but there's always sometimes going to be a slightly different, I guess, angle to these reports as well. Some are called impact reports, and probably by the name, it means it's going to start focusing on your impacts, and very often there's going to be sort of celebratory reports, and they may not be part of your financial accounting, and they might not be part of your financial reporting. So that already sends a message in terms of where you see the story that you're going to tell in that report in relation to your business strategy. That's also going to drive what you're going to put in that report. if you're going to be looking at something like an ESG report, that may have some connotations as well. So it maybe speaks more to compliance, maybe speaks more to investor community, maybe speaks more to the financially minded stakeholders. Therefore, the way you're going to structure this report has to follow a very particular format, and the kind of data that you're going to put in there and how you may present it will probably also be informed by the kind of audience. We now obviously have various legislations, regulations. So CSRD has introduced the structure, but also that means it has to be an integrated report. And that then drives a whole vast amount of data that previously probably wasn't sitting in those reports. So even thinking about, is this going to be regulatory requirement and compliance to a particular standard? Do I just want to tell specific stories and just around impact? Do I want to share this as part of my overall business performance? Do I want to signal that sustainability and the performance in those parameters is actually part of my business? And if you do, then it has to be integrated. Or do I want to just separate those elements because I know the kind of people who are going to be reading this will be very, very different types of audiences. So all of those considerations will drive how you start approaching this. Our recommendation is to start moving towards recognizable standards. So CSRD has also the small organization standards, so VSME, but starting to move in the direction of something that's more holistic. And the one thing also to keep in mind with these reports, where it is not mandated and where it is not particularly kind of structured with the regulation, it means that we may only be focusing on the impacts. We may not actually be focusing on climate resilience or risk opportunities angles because we just focus on impacts. And that may become a missed opportunity in terms of the business value. And so the more holistic reporting frameworks, which are looking at double materiality and sort of the various details around relevance to the business, actually take you much further beyond just looking at impacts and offer that business value through the compliancy minded type words, but resilience and risk and opportunities become much more integrated into how you think about sustainability overall. So that's also a trajectory, but I suggest that wording and naming of your report makes a very big difference. Recommendation number 2, a bit of a combination, but make it real and useful. So if we are going to align it to a framework, align it to the latest one, because that builds confidence and trust. And some of the senior stakeholders, investors, analysts, or board members may then have more confidence in completeness, accuracy, and generally the practices that you're following. Even if you don't actually have to do it, you still have the flexibility to apply those principles. Utilize stories. I probably don't have to tell you this because this is sort of a fairly standard practice, but it's still always a good reminder that even if you're going to be putting any kind of data and statistics, wrapping them into stories makes people remember them much better. And also it starts to create loyalty. So as people read stories and they can relate to them, they're not just remembering what you're doing, they start potentially placing themselves in those stories, and it starts to bring things to life for them. So actually they can start understanding a little bit more about what those numbers actually mean in reality. Reports tend to be lengthy and they tend to be really long and wordy, and obviously lots of data points. But in the sections, get to the point. And when somebody opens a report, you want to make sure that their experience is something that they want to kind of repeat every time you publish a report or any other piece of information. So when somebody opens something, they want to know, what are they going to read here? What are the key messages? What's good? What hasn't worked? What are the actions you want them to do? Or what are the actions you're taking? Just be very specific, signposted. But sometimes we have really, really long sort of introductory paragraphs and kind of all of the narratives. Be very succinct. At this point in time, nobody really reads a lot of very lengthy information unless they have to. And so if you want people to take something away, they need to be really clear what that is. I mean, it's not a Twitter message, but it is something that has to be very, very easy to consume. So if there's an action, you can make it really clear as well. So is this provide feedback? Do you want somebody to contact you? Is this about how guests can contribute to any of this? People not going to have long attention span. And ultimately, if we do know that we're going to have different audiences, you might want to signpost it in the report itself. So structure it in those sections. So if I'm your guest, I probably want to know stories. I probably want to understand how my experience has been impacted and maybe how you're living my values. So there needs to be a section for guests. Same that often happens on the websites. You can just signpost to the area which is specifically designed for you. If I'm an investor and I'm looking for financial information, or from an analyst, I don't mind scrolling through lots of pages as long as I get to my numbers. And I'm probably going to be using various tools and machines and AI to extract the data. So the way you structure those sections needs to also be easy for those machines to work. So whether it's tagging, XBLR, and various other formats. So if you just start structuring it in a way for people to understand that's actually speaking to them in their language, it starts becoming a much easier experience, and hundreds of pages no longer become scary because you know not all of them are for you. So you can actually skip that. Some examples of that in practice. So getting to the point, if we're talking about sustainability progress, we need to demonstrate what the progress actually is. So there needs to be very early on in the report, here is what we've tried to do, here's what we've done, are we doing well, are we not doing well, what are the specific goals, etc. And then you have an opportunity to go and look for more details. But anything that gives a bit more visualization and snapshots is always really helpful. Similarly, any kind of infographics and mix of colors and images and using real people and real stories and real locations starts to help to make sense about how you have performed in the period. But also, like an example here on the left, you can navigate to another section if you don't want to read everything else, which might not be relevant to you. So anything that makes it really easy in print as well as digital is really helpful. We just said that different people and machines use the data. So here may be an example how you may start with humans in mind, and you have at the front section a story with an image with some sort of performance in a very easy, digestible, visual way. And we're talking about energy and carbon reduction, but the same performance can be represented in numbers, but further down at the back of the report. So same piece of information for different audiences and becomes significantly easier to process without overloading. Point number 3, do not fear acknowledging unmitigated negative impacts, or ultimately talking about areas where you may not necessarily have solved everything. And there's often a fear of talking about something business hasn't done, or maybe has not done as far as they may have wanted to do it. So example here would be biodiversity disclosure. It's a new topic. Nature's obviously come on the radars, and not everybody's been able to work out how to approach this. So some organizations have been very open about what they have been able to do and what they have not. And that's still helpful because it demonstrates to others that there is lots of efforts and specific tools and methodologies. So for the next year, there can be then improvements. And it's always good to know that everybody's perfect anyway, and it's an effort for everyone. Number 4 is eyes get eyes. So if you're going to talk about any stories on the pages of your report, our brains are wired to look for faces. And if we see something that resembles a face, i.e. we need to see eyes, nose and mouth, even if it's a human or whether it's going to be an animal or any other image that seems to resemble eyes, people will spend more time on that page and they'll engage with that better. And actually one of the examples of this was the Body Shop experiment, where they've actually done a split testing of the same campaign on this BioBridge project. And the one with the monkey that has eyes had significantly more engagement, more downloads, and ultimately more donations. So it becomes much more effective. And that's probably why you see a lot of reports, people looking at you, directly at you and speaking to you. So actually you're going to have to spend a bit more time reading their story because now you're much more invested. The brain just does it for us. And the final point, avoid green cuteness overload. Sustainability reports tend to have lots of green and lots of nature in the background, but that nature not always specific. So we don't actually always recognize what the particular species might be, which is a missed opportunity to educate as well. It might always be well placed, so sometimes can be actually overdone. So if you do use it, use an opportunity to actually also name it so that there is a bit more of an education. So what kind of plant might that be? Specifically what it is we're looking at, so people have a bit more information, because the more we know about nature, the more connected to it we are, the more we actually then can do something to protect it. And as an opportunity to do that through your report, maybe get inspiration from Spotify, who have launched this campaign, Nature Being an Artist. So for any of the tracks that you listen on Spotify that use specific nature sounds, nature gets money, royalty, like an artist would do. So if you are going to be using any kind of nature imagery in your reports, maybe this could be a good way to contribute to nature conservation in the same way. So acknowledge nature is not just and contribute. I'll leave these 5 points with you, and hopefully this can help you also treat your reports an extension of your guest experience and not just a burden with lots of numbers in it. Thank you very much, Kathy. I'll hand over back to you.
Thank you, Marina. That was also a brilliant presentation. So many lovely little insights in there, and I'm going to definitely check out my Spotify playlist and start hitting the buttons. That's awesome. Thank you. Just before we come to our final speaker, we're going to have a bit of a Q&A with Renée. Just would love, again, for anyone listening who hasn't yet done so, to pop in the chat what your main challenge is so far with your own sustainability or impact reporting organization, or indeed, what is the barrier if you don't yet have one? We started off by asking people to put yes or no as to whether they are currently doing a report out of their organization. But now we'd also love to put into the chat, what is your barriers or your main challenges with this? And I hope some of those are already being unlocked as we listen to these brilliant speakers and their advice. So thank you. And also just a final invitation to pop any questions you have. Doesn't have to be particular to a speaker, but generically about the topic into the Q&A, and we'll see if we can come to those at the end. So do get your thoughts into those Q&A. So Renée, you've done various things as well, but you are now bringing all this to life inside Orascom. So would love to, first of all, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and then I've got a few questions for you that might be really helpful also for the audience to put some of that great theory into practice.
Great, thank you very much, Katie. Well, my name is Nicole Wagner. I'm working since 1.5 years within Orascom Hotels. I've been previously working for a French international hotel company, and ESG has been my topic, one of my scope topic since 15 years already. So I know it quite well, I can say, and it's my passion. And therefore it makes life much more easier when you work in a topic which is your passion than just in a topic that where you don't have any relationship. And working for an Egyptian company is completely different for working for a European company. And as mentioned by Isabel previously as well, CSRD, EU taxonomy, all those kind of things are currently not affected. I'm not affected by those topics yet. But as mentioned as well by Isabel previously, start today instead of swimming up tomorrow. And that is what we have done within Orascom as well. So I've trained my hotels to use the Because tool as well, and to collect their data and to see where do we stand today, to use the tool as well. And I probably take one of your questions, Katie, already there. We use the tool as well to see where do we stand today. We have implemented historical data as well in here, and to see out of it what are our action plans that need to be done. And again, working with a different culture, with a different knowledge and different legislation as well, we do not have the pressure yet that European Union countries may have, which is an advantage, but which could be as well a disadvantage.
Yes, absolutely. Readiness and preparedness. All this preparation takes a lot of time, and it's not just dependent on one person in the organization. Even if it's landing on you to run the project, you need the data from multiple colleagues and not necessarily even in your own jurisdiction, your suppliers and so on. So definitely today is the day to begin if we haven't yet. Thank you. Yeah, you did kind of briefly answer a bit of this, but just for Orascom, have you experienced there been a particular benefit where maybe the preparation of the report or the sharing of this report directly has supported Orascom in its own strategic decision making, or highlighted an opportunity to drive more positive change within the company?
Well, it helps a lot to understand the topic of ESG and to share the knowledge and to raise awareness around it, because ESG is much more than just planting a tree, and we all know it. But if you're not in a topic, you don't have any relation to it. You have heard about the ESG word, but you don't have any needs of it. And going through the process in implementing and creating and writing down the data and collecting them, I figured out that a lot of more people are really involved in the topic than just the operational part and the financial part. It's as well the engineering part, which is a lot affected in it and integrated in it here. And it's about more involving as well the HR team and involving really everyone as well, teams that you haven't thought about it. Why not involving the marketing and the commercial team as well in it?
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. And I think it's been mentioned by Isabel and Marina as well, the sort of the notion of compliance. And I think for many organizations today, despite the fact that we are sitting in a global polycrisis, multiple different challenges and priorities keep coming, and the world is now rapidly changing and unpredictable. And I think there's a compliance sense of sustainability being there to tick boxes. But compliance comes for a reason. It's a lever, it's a nudge, it's a stick to try to support business and our economy to shift away from risk, because inherently we have multiple risks that by the nature of our activities in every industry, and particularly in this sector, we are impacting and depending upon so many different areas of nature, of communities, of different stakeholders, and the way we govern our companies is directly enabling us or disabling us to manage those risks effectively. And so that is why ESG, it's a risk management framework, but actually we need to shift beyond that now, and compliance is there to support all of us to actually manage those risks better. And here at the Alliance, we take that one step further. We're going beyond compliance and beyond sustainability, because we actually can unlock opportunity for companies by mitigating those risks and understanding that bigger picture. So I guess that is why transparency is critical, to know within our own organizations where we're at, what is our state of play, where do we need to get to, and what is that gap that's already been mentioned earlier. And so I guess, Renée, how have you managed to balance that accountability and that transparency with those actions that are to come? And how do you ensure that your reporting is not just a compliance tick box exercise, but is meaningful for the organization and for those who need to understand your organization's state of play?
Well, I think at the beginning, you need to raise awareness towards the entire topic, because if the team you are talking with and which you need to be involved does not have the same understanding, you don't need to start.
Yeah,
I think that is key. And transparency is a fundamental aspect. And it's what we do. It's not only our goal to collect data, but it's as well to move from insights towards action. So therefore, we collect our data to see what action plans do we need to then create and involve, and to set up. It's not just creating an action plan and tick the box here as well. It's action and reaction. And yeah, as mentioned as well from Marina before, it's a storytelling you could use. And it's a beautiful story you can build around. And yeah, and you discover a lot more things than you have seen before.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Yeah, it's really a strategic compass, isn't it? To be forced to check in annually on where you're at, where you want to be, where you've achieved things, where you haven't. And as everybody said, no one's figured this all out yet, right? We're all learning together all the time. So it's okay to not have resolved all of our challenges and mitigated all of our risks. But we have to do that collectively. And again, it's part of the Alliance's work to support the industry with guidance on how to transition away from that risk towards resilience and accelerate progress across the industry. And yes, it takes everybody in the organization. When I do presentations, we're always saying it's now everybody's job. It doesn't matter what is your role or on your job description. It is for everyone to participate in this transformation, this transition, because we are all having an impact somewhere else by the decisions that we make every day. And that impact is either good or less good on the various different stakeholders that your industry depends upon. So I guess for you, Renée, we're talking already about, having to involve other teams. At Orascom, who do you most depend upon or invite to participate in the collection of data for your reports? And how do you ensure that consistency of, I guess, that knowledge, that understanding, but also the contribution from different stakeholders?
Well, as mentioned before, we do share our knowledge and collaborate and involve the operational teams. the engineering team, which is key to be involved, because most of the engineering teams, they have more data than we all together may have, and they have another deeper knowledge of the topic that is very helpful. We have involved the finance team, we have involved the HR team, the brand and the marketing team, and we do as well involve our development team, because when we do have the data from today and we do plan hotels for tomorrow, we need to integrate them as well. So I think it's key to involve the development department as well, because otherwise you need to start again from scratch with an additional stakeholder part. And keeping the team as big as possible is better than having a small team and then running behind everyone and not knowing where to get which data from and which knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure it hasn't been all plain sailing. What has your greatest challenge been since you've been inside Orascom about pulling those teams together, those stakeholders, communicating, getting that data?
Well, my biggest challenge was really to get the data and to understand which data is needed. Yeah. Because I think from what I've learned, the definition of a word is always different. And you really need to understand the definition, the right definition, because it can mean planting a tree, but it can mean as well planting some seeds. So you need to really understand the topic before diving deeper. And a big challenge, and we are not yet affected, is the time thing.
Yeah.
So if you're not planning it on a monthly basis, at the end of the year, you don't have enough time. So by integrating it on a daily, on a monthly, on a regular process, it's life facilitating for everyone, for your team who needs to enter the data, for you to collect the data, and for everyone to talk about it.
Yeah, and that is a real opportunity to empower your teams to participate in the strategic risk management and unlocking of opportunities for your organization, and helping everybody to align on their understanding and their knowledge of where their own role is impacting on wider systems. So no, I think that's fantastic. Aside from being you and people in your team or others that you support help, have you identified any particular tools or systems, process that you could share with the audience that have really helped you to formulate those elements needed for your report, be that data gathering or structures?
We have been talking, or I have been talking a lot with our engineering team, and I've been quite in a regular exchange with the Because team, and I think probably gonna hate me because due to all my emails I'm asking them. But I think with the knowledge of, or with the conversation engineering team, Because and myself, we do get on a data collection that is helpful for everyone. And as an additional tool, we use Excel sheets, which is helpful, which is still conducted by the engineering team because they have it since years. So it's better to have quite a lot of things double instead of once and you lose them. And what we use is a Power BI as well for internal dashboards. And I think most of us use at least one out of those tools to have really the data collected and I get a better overview and as well a historical overview on that. And then you can compare it.
Yeah, super. And of course, there's just an increasing number of tech tools that are coming out to measure and monitor all sorts of organizational impacts and dependencies across the value chain, including nature and biodiversity impacts in different areas, your supply chains and so on. So there's a lot of support out there today, keeps coming, which is exciting. All the speakers have spoken about the need for this report to provide transparency to multiple different stakeholders. And an investor and a customer are very different people with very different interests in different areas of your business. So if you have one report, how on earth do you manage communicating in this beautiful storytelling way the right kind of data that's interesting to them and the right way that helps them engage and make their decisions accordingly? Because ultimately this is also a tool for different stakeholders to choose how and why and if they engage with your business. So how do you do that?
Difficult. As you mentioned, it's very difficult if you have different stakeholders, what is interesting for whom. And I think the easiest way might be to have a clear index. if you have a clear index, you know, as a guest or as an investor, which sector is dedicated for you instead of having 10 different reports. I think this might probably be the easiest way to have it in one document. But then, as mentioned as well from Marina, you probably may have a document with up to 300-400 pages. But you need to help them or a dedicated audience to find their way.
Yeah, I don't know if thanks, it's a good idea. I don't know if Marina or Isabel have any thoughts on that same question. And then I've got a last question that again I'll open up for all of you to answer, but
maybe I could just build on sort of the sections. Renee, thank you. I totally agree. So sections, you know, whether it's a digital format, but I think there's also maybe two other aspects. One, how well do you actually know your audience? So for example, with CSRD, you've got the DMA process, you have to speak to your various stakeholders. So that's your mechanism to actually ask them, what do you want to know? Rather than sitting and guessing what kind of format and also what specifically to put in. So that's one way, you know, just actually getting to know exactly what is useful. In the absence of having that sort of specific process, just making sort of personas or assumptions around that once you have signposted, but maybe just for yourself and your planning and thinking, what do I want each group to take away? Like, because what is the risk or what is the implication of them not getting the information? So for example, investors don't really read things, as far as I'm aware. There is lots of specific data points they look for, but they collect it in a very different way. So they might not be as interested in knowing what is the sort of social impact that you have created in the village up in the mountains in Peru. That's not really something that's going to feature into their scoring system. But maybe your customer would be very interested to know that, because then they understand that once they've paid money to you, they've contributed to that particular village. And if you can demonstrate to them exactly how their participation links to that, then you can create loyalty. So you can also then flip it back to what do you want people to know and structure it in that way so that the messages also stand out really clearly for those specific groups. And obviously that becomes an evolution on, you know, understanding who actually looked at it, downloads, eyeballs, all of your statistics or digital will inform for your next year what has worked really well and maybe whether the right people got the right information.
Yeah, also nice tips there. Super, thank you. Isabel, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that or if I'll go to the next question for everyone.
Yeah, I think just briefly, as I also said, and Marina just said, that the double materiality assessment is of essence here to understand what the stakeholders want to know. When it comes to guests, I think it's not about bringing them to the report, but bringing the report to them, meaning to use the stories that you have consolidated in the report, also in your social media, on your website, on your communication, and also on site to tell the stories. Yeah, not expect that they're going through a 300-page report, but give them the little snippets that make their experience on site also more exciting and more valuable.
Thank you. Actually, you brought up a phrase that I wanted to dig into a little bit before we finish. So I'm just going to do that right now. Audience, just wonder if you would be happy to pop again in the chat a yes or a no. How familiar are you with the phrase double materiality? If you're very clear on what it means, just put yes. And if you're not really sure or you don't know, please put no. This is really important because there's this whole lingo and acronyms that come up in the sustainability ESG space, and double materiality is still often something that sustainability professionals are not really grappling with, and it is important. Okay, most people here yes. Okay, super. No, a couple not, yeah. And again, many people, it's still not on the radar of many people, and so it's just a sense of understanding that, because it also helps us to think about what future webinars should we really be doing, how can we sort of really dig into some of these things that are foundational to support in the reports, but also your wider strategic management. Thank you so much to all of you who shared back there. Great, thank you, Isabel. So one more question I'm going to open up again to all the panelists, maybe starting with you, Renée. And this question is, where do you see sustainability reporting heading over the next 2 to 3 years for especially the hospitality sector? We are facing not only unprecedented pace of change in the world, but that is by its nature giving us these increasing diverse and incoming policy requirements and expectations from stakeholders who are all sort of starting to understand much more around the impacts and dependencies of the businesses that they're choosing to purchase or not. And we've got this very complicated political landscape that also causes more divide than synthesis, which is also slightly unhelpful when it comes to regional reporting requirements and so on. So what do you think is going to happen going forward for this communication piece?
Well, I hope, to be honest, it's going to be more going into a real-time tracking and stronger links to financial impacts and to financial performance. And I think as well as Scope 3 emission, especially related to food and travel, will become a bigger focus.
Yeah. And I think if we were to unpack the why there, this is because general citizens who are the customers of leisure, travel, tourism, hospitality, food are increasingly aware of the choices they're making and wanting to make impactful choices that are more positive than negative. And that is why this information, not just being used to promote your organization, but also used by third parties who can see what is publicly available, can then pass that information on. And that translates into a tiny little green leaf or a little green tick or a flag or whatever it is. And so the more information that can be shared that feeds into that publicly available data, the more likely you are going to be able to kind of get approval.
But the more means as well not to stand up into greenwashing, that you need to be very careful. More is not always better.
Thank you. And I think that is also the point that's also been made earlier, where it's okay to state where you've still got progress to be made, because everybody does. But I think what's important in that more is being open and humble and I guess transparent and accountable to your impacts, and saying, we now recognize this is something we need to work on. That's okay as a statement, right? But and we have a plan of doing that, which we hope to update you on in a year's time. And that is what people are after, right? Not that it's just being hidden or ignored. Marina, where do you think the landscape is going for sustainability related communications reporting?
Definitely second the fact that's going to converge with the financial reporting, and it has to become the single integrated and talk to the business risk, opportunities and money. I think the other element is probably going to shift more towards the expectation to demonstrate the doing and the progress, because we had a phase where we had lots of commitments. We have a phase when we talk about the trying and the challenges, but I think soon enough there will be a phase we're going to have to be under pressure to start demonstrating what has been achieved. With the greenwashing legislation, I think it's a really important point. There is also then more of a shift from storytelling as a whole report to actually very much hard facts, whether that's live data, whether that's data that's captured, and then you kind of find the way, shape or form, an acknowledgement that we're moving from initiatives to business model changes and very sort of strong business matters. So whether that's hope or prediction, that's probably where I would see this going. And the final one I'll leave, I think, is the fact it's probably going to be a bit of like a yo-yo with AI, because I think for a period of time, AI is going to play a really big role in writing and reading reports, because I think what we see now, there's one AI writes something, the other one digests it, and the third AI analyzes it. There's actually no humans involved in the process, but the humans will always be there. So I think it will come back to actually storytelling for humans in different formats. Maybe that's vision, maybe movies, maybe that's videos, whatever that's going to come. So there'll be a separation between the AI focused data for the purpose of accounting or investment and the storytelling in different formats to actually engage humans in other ways.
Yes, such an important insight. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, and absolutely, again, that point of greenwashing avoidance does not mean green hushing, i.e. going silent and not disclosing. That is only going to fuel the fire for your smart, savvy AI tools and also your humans who are looking for what your actions are. It is about understanding, learning, getting the right advice and support, and making action-orientated plans that are transparent and meaningful. So thank you for that. Isabel, build on
that? I think I can echo what my fellow speaker said. Just to add on it, I believe that there will be more reporting. We just have to acknowledge that, even if we have had some setbacks here in the EU with the omnibus proposal, delaying the reporting a little bit more. But all in all, I believe that the reporting requirements will only increase. And I think there will also be more consolidation of different reporting frameworks across the globe. And finding and seeking more alignment between the different frameworks. We've just seen with EFRAG, the entity working on the ESRS, for example, that joined the Greenhouse Gas Standard Board as an observer to also influence standardization more across the different reporting standards. And I think that will be the trend in the future as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah. And I think, you know, the reporting and standards bodies in different areas of the world are desperately trying to consolidate, to align, to make this more streamlined, to align regions to their reporting requirements. So that is happening slowly. And yeah, just as since we're here, that is also what the Alliance is doing. For those who are familiar with the pathway to net positive hospitality, that's what we're working on this year, to broaden out the number of topics that are reflecting that full spectrum of impacts and dependency of the industry, and to deepen the guidance and the sort of actionable KPIs that demonstrate where you are, whether you're at the very beginning of that sustainability journey towards what we ultimately want to collectively transition to as a sector, which is a net positive status and all of those themes. So what does that look like? How do we articulate all of that? That will be content, I'm sure, for future webinars, but that is definitely one of our missions, to support all of you in preparing. And I think back to that preparation and that timeframes, yes, Omnibus has been pushed back for those largest organizations, and I think that doesn't reflect at all that it's going away. But, you know, TNFD and these frameworks, again, compliance for very robust reason, to support you all with understanding your risks so that you can get a broader picture of where your risks might suddenly come, given this the changes the world is facing. They're voluntary, so that organizations are given time to figure this out and to get the support they need to help guide them through how to capture that data and what to do with that data. It is not to say it doesn't really matter. It's like, okay, we're giving you more time now because no one really did anything. So now is really time, and we will come down with it. So it's almost like an offering, a gift, to have this time to prepare over the next couple of years. And those fines, I think, will get bigger and stronger when it becomes mandatory. So really smart practice strategically to get underway. So thank you all so much for those fantastic insights, for those brilliant presentations that you shared, and Renée for sharing how it's been for you as a practitioner now doing this in-house. Go the engineering team, I think. They sound like they're really critical. Thank you also to the audience for sharing your time with us, and I hope that's been really useful for you. The recording of this will come out to you. Laura will share that out in the next week or two. So yeah, thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Marina, Isabel, Renée. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hope you all have a great rest of the day.
You too. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.